Hey guys, we are live. Welcome to the Bags to Riches podcast. I'm Zach Ginn, your host. I quitted my minimum wage bag boy job to pursue the riches of real estate investing at the age of 17 and never looked back. I'm here to educate and inform entrepreneurs, young and old, how to become complete real estate investors by talking to the best and most influential minds of real estate. I am joined by Wendy Patton. Wendy is a real estate investor, realtor, creative finance expert, and most importantly, a wife, mother, and grandmother. She is the premier lease option queen and expert in creative financing all over real estate investing. Thank you for coming on today, Wendy.
You're welcome, Zach. I'm so glad we could do this. Thank you for having me.
All right. So a quick background, guys. If you ever wanted to know why Rick did so well, 2007, 2008, and 2009, short sales, lease options, creative financing, it was all due to Wendy Patton and her systems. Rick's implemented his systems during that time. I can remember as a young kid, I don't know if you remember this big CD tray that used to sell. It was you, but you're like whispering. And yeah. I remember it. Yes.
Secrets of options.
Yeah, and I just remember that in the back of the car where he's just playing it while he was driving, taking me to school, and he was just educating himself. And ever since I had the back of my head, Wendy Patton, and it's such an honor to hear you, and you're definitely one of the best. And I feel like a lot of the younger people don't know who you are, and they really need to understand. So I wanted to just do the cliche thing. Let's get this out of the way. Can you talk about how you got started in real estate investing?
Sure. Well, I was a little bit older than you, I guess. I was 21. You're 20, right?
Yes.
Yay! I love it. I love it. I was 21, and I just graduated from the University of Colorado. I was born and raised in Colorado my whole life at the Air Force Academy, and my mother had been to a real estate seminar some week right after I graduated or right before I graduated. And when she got home, she had bought this real estate course. And to this day, Zach, I really don't remember whose course it was. It was probably, it wasn't Carlton Sheets but it was one of the 70s and 80s guys or whatever, I'm sure. But anyway, she bought this course, brought it home, and my dad said, no, we're not investing in real estate. We're not doing that. It's too risky. And I was packing my moving van to move to Michigan, where I got my job out of school. And she pulled me aside and said, hey, Wendy, I can't do anything with this course. Will you do something with it for me? And I don't know why she picked me other than out of 6 kids, other than I love to flip things and make a buck. And I was there. And she handed me this real estate course, and I took it with me on my drive to Michigan and started listening to it on the way. And a light bulb went off on me, and I thought, gosh, this is what I want to do. I want to flip houses. I mean, there's a lot of money in that, and it sounds so much fun. I love flipping stuff. And so that's what I did. I got to Michigan. I did have my job. I worked my job for a while. And in the meantime, I started learning about real estate investing, all aspects of it. I really started digging in, and I ended up with the niche of, because I really use money. I honestly, I made about $10 an hour, which was 20 grand a year approximately. And I had student loan debt. And, that was, 20 grand was, you could live on it, but it was certainly not good. It's not much better than it is now, right? And anyways, as I learned about these investing deals, I started doing investing deals. And my first deal, I made over 20 grand. And I remember thinking, I'm sure this is just a fluke. It's, not really going to always happen like this, that I would make more on my deal than I made all year long working for my company. And I didn't leave my job right away because I didn't really actually know for sure it was legit until after it was repeatable over and over and over and over again. And that's kind of how I got started in it.
Wow. So can you explain how much of an influence those first couple people were that, that course was? I mean, how did you really start gaining more knowledge after that original course you're listening to?
Well, the way that I started gaining more knowledge was I joined a real estate investor group. So
Hmm.
that's one of the big things I recommend. And of course, that, by the way, that was in 1985 when I started. And so over 30 years ago. And I joined a local real estate investor group. Now I run the largest real estate investor group in the state of Michigan, Michigan Real Estate Investors Group. And I love it. You know, I used to travel around teaching people about investing to all the other investor groups around the country. And so I kind of learned a lot about investor groups and decided to start one that would help others learn about investing. So when you go to a real estate investor group, you kind of, you know, you get you get kind of a taste of a lot of different things, right? You know, a little bit about fix and flip, a little bit about buy and hold, a little bit about lease options, subject twos, land development, apartment building, commercial, whatever it is that, you know, is out there, a lot of different aspects. And then you just can start to pick and choose and figure out what kind of fits with you, and then really dig in deep to that topic. You know, you mentioned whose course did I have in the beginning, and I don't remember the name, but I did remember that it changed my life. And that investment that my mom made changed the whole trajectory of my entire future, you know. And, you know, by the way, 20, 30 years, no, I shouldn't say 20 years later, probably maybe 10 years after I started investing, my parents, my dad, who was a skeptic at the time, in the beginning, became my private lenders, one of my private lenders. And he was a private lender for 5% and thought it was like, woo! and you know, so and that was a big deal for him to be kind of involved in this whole thing that I was doing and learning about. But I kind of started down a road of in rentals initially, and then I got into the lease options, and then I went real heavy and real deep in lease options. And then I created a course on it, of course, and then I started doing subject twos and a lot more fix and flips. And I've done almost all the different types of aspects of real estate investing. I do some commercial now and everything, but I didn't start with all of it in the beginning because, gosh, you know, that's a lot of ADD, right? You know, like, okay, you can't really be great at one thing if you're doing everything. So I picked a niche and I just went for it. And they all work, right? You know, you and your dad, you do a lot of wholesaling. It works, right? It's the niche, but do you also do other things too? Does he do other stuff too?
Oh, we do everything. Short sales,
Yeah.
wholetailing, sub twos, lease options, any owner financing, everything.
But
So,
you know, when you first started, you don't do like everything, right? You kind of get a niche and you maybe get known for something. But then as you learn more and more aspects of the investing world, you're able to do more deals because a deal comes to you. Maybe it's a wholesale deal. You're like, it's too far away. I don't want to do it. I'm going to wholesale, or I'll hotel it. Or, hey, this one's a really great one. It's not good enough to wholesale, but I'll take over the deed, do a sub two because the mortgage rates are great, or there's a lot of equity each month going toward that principal. So you can you get better and better at every aspect of it as you go through the years, you know, of investing.
yeah, I mean, I personally, I've had three epiphanies, like mind-blowing epiphanies in real estate investing the past 3 years, and it's happened every year after. So my first one was when I was 17 and I realized I could wholesale a house for 30 grand. That blew my mind.
And that's huge. You're like 17, 30 grand.
It was unbelievable.
I mean, that's average income is now, but not much higher, right?
Yeah. And the second one was I figured out I could make 30,000 virtually wholesaling. That blew my mind again.
Oh, that blows my mind.
That blew my mind. And then the last one that blew my mind was about a year ago when I figured out that lease options were a thing. That blew my mind the most.
Yeah.
It was insane. Yeah. And I've been on a mission just diving deep on them now, and we're trying to get more and more of them now. It was just so attractive in the market the past 3 years just to make 40, 50K in a wholesale and just do 2 of them a month.
Yeah.
And sellers were the market was just going up and sellers just wanted to cash out. And I was talking to Rick about it, and his number one way he was getting his lease options was when the market was going down. And I feel like this is where we're starting to go to now.
Yes, I agree with you. Mm-hmm.
So that's why I wanted to bring you on here and just talk about it. So can you really, in a quick synopsis, I don't want to, you're way better teaching than me. Can you explain a lease option to a young audience member that doesn't know what that is?
Yeah, sure. So really, a lease option is a great strategy that ties into almost anything else that you do already. So whatever I'm going to say about lease options, if you're a wholesaler, you should know them. If you're a rehabber, you should know about them. If you're, buy and hold, you should know about them. So anyways, a lease option is, if you really just slow it down, it kind of answers the question for you. It's a lease with the right to purchase a property. So it's a lease with the option to buy a property. And the key thing about a lease option is that the option is not an obligation to buy. It's the privilege, it's the right, it's the opportunity to buy something if you choose to, right? So you have the right to use the property, which is the lease part, and the right to purchase it, which is the option part, during some time period. So typically, like, just to kind of give you like a example, I would, find a seller or someone who's maybe a landlord and they have a property, and either they're trying to rent it, they're trying to sell it, and I flip it to a lease with an option instead of one of the two things they were maybe trying to do. And I will try to option that or lease that property with them for something less than retail value, of course, right? Because I don't want to pay $1,200 a month and it's only rents for $1,200. That would be not that great of a deal unless there was a lot more on the back end. Now that's a possibility as well. I mean, there's a lot of aspects to this, right? But I'll kind of give you the high level. But in general, you're looking for something where you can lease it from the owner for less than you can sublet it for, and you have some right to buy it within a given time period. And usually I'll try to get 3 to 5 years from the seller. So let's say they're going to rent it to me for $1,200 a month, and I get to purchase that property for $150 sometime within the next 5 years, if I choose to. Now, obviously, if the property value goes down, I'm not going to exercise. I might renegotiate, get longer term, whatever. But I'm probably not going to exercise and purchase that property. Property values go up, I'll probably exercise and make the money on that deal. The other thing that you can do, and this is kind of going to add like one of my favorite tricks to this, is out of that 1,200, the key part of that is how much of that gets applied to that purchase price. I call those option credits, right? So obviously I want to get 100% option credit. So out of $1,200, I want $1,200 to be applied to the purchase price. That's not always possible. So maybe $500 a month, $600, but it's huge kind of principal or value or equity being built up in that property over time. So if I owe, $150 on it in the beginning, and let's say I get, for easy number, I get $500 a month credit, then the next month I'm going to owe $149,500, then $149, then $148,500, $148. You got the idea. A huge way to really build up equity. Now with that, when you're optioning properties, you can just be optioning them to build a portfolio that you're going to, turn over and refinance later and turn into long-term buy and holds. You can sublet them into what's called a sandwich lease option, where you find a buyer who wants to lease option it from you for maybe $179,900, and they get 0 credits, by the way, right now. I used to teach people to give credit. If they're paying $1,500 a month, let them pay $1,500 a month for rent. And then, maybe they're buying it for, something higher, obviously, than what you're buying it for. And as your price, they might be buying it for this, you're buying it for this, but over time, over the 3 years, you're buying it for this, if you're doing those option credits. So that spread of what you're going to make on that deal is going to increase. That's called a sandwich lease option. And the other lease option, I don't know if this is more than info than you wanted, Zach, but no. The other kind of lease option is a huge one for wholesalers. A lot of wholesalers, if there's not enough spread in the deal, they'll walk away because it doesn't meet their 60, 70%, after repair value, whatever. They might walk away from a deal when in fact, maybe they could wholesale the lease option. So they could option a property from a seller. Seller has, maybe they want 150, it's only worth 150, and they really can't go much lower because they owe 150. But they've got a decent payment. Maybe their payment's $1,000 a month. It might, rent for equal or more than that. Then you could wholesale that option. So you let's say the seller wants 150, you might find a tenant buyer for 160, and you just take, they have 10 grand down, you take the 10 grand, and seller gets 150, you get the 10 grand, the buyer gets it for 160, and you just walk away from that deal. Something similar. Typically, lease option wholesale, usually they're about 3 to 5% because of the purchase price for the wholesale fee. Because typically the tenant buyers who need to be a tenant buyer because they can't buy a mortgage, they don't typically have, huge chunks of cash like an investor would have. So, they're not going to sell it to an investor who's got 30 grand down, like you were talking about, 30 grand to buy that wholesale. These tenant buyers don't typically have that. But it is a way to still make money on those deals that normally be passing up. Okay, I call that a cooperative lease option.
Definitely.
Does that help a little bit? That's maybe more than you wanted to know, but
definitely. I mean, I brought some other guys that are really big into it. They do a lot of sub twos, a lot of stuff out west, and he really explained subject twos really well. Explained lease options, things like that. I prefer lease options just because I'm in Florida, and I don't like the due on sale clause, things like that. But what I really wanted to talk to you about is something you're really big on, which I don't see a lot of people talking about, is getting deals on the MLS from Realtors. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so a lot of my sandwich lease options over the years have been through real estate agents. And typically, now I don't do cooperative from real estate agents, even though I'm a real estate agent, right? I don't do cooperative or wholesale options because that just freaks them out. They don't understand that I'm going to buy something and I'm going to flip it and I'm going to make 3 to 5% on it as an option fee versus commission. They don't understand those things. I don't do those through real estate agents. But so sandwich lease options, big deal. And especially now as we're moving, I believe, into a shifting market, and we're going to see some shift, everything going on. Could be in the next year or two. Could be a little bit slower. I mean, think about it. You can't pump trillions of dollars into the economy that we don't have and that doesn't exist and not think it's going to affect us, at some point.
Don't get me started with that.
We're going to lose our houses. There's going to be some great short sale opportunities, I think, again, which is great. But as far as, what was I saying again?
I was talking to realtors.
Oh, realtors. Oh my gosh,
options.
I'm so sorry. I, as you know, Zach, I have a granddaughter being born any second. We've been up late and up early, and I'm like trying to work, and I'm in a different state. Sorry, we're senior moment, Anyways, so basically, working with real estate agents. So what I'm looking for with real estate agents typically are properties that have been on the market for maybe more than 90 days. And so even if the market is a really strong, quick market, there are always properties that are on the market over 90 days, always. Even in Florida, even in Phoenix, Arizona, it doesn't matter where or how hot the market is. And for the most part, our entire country has been fairly hot, So it doesn't matter where it is. There's always deals that are sitting on the market a little bit longer. And we're going to see more and more of those as the market slows down. So then what I do is I'll just call up the real estate agent, and it's going to go like this. Let's say you're the real estate agent. I go, hey, Zach, hi, this is, if I'm licensed, so I'm going to acknowledge I'm licensed. You're not licensed, so are you licensed? Zach, are you licensed as a real estate agent? Okay.
No, there's a little lag between us, but.
Oh, got it. Okay. So I would say, hey, hi, this is, hi, my name is Wendy, and I was calling about your house on 123 XYZ Street. And then, of course, the real estate agent will be like, yeah. And I go, and I only ask a few questions. I say, well, I live near there. I've driven by it or whatever. I've noticed it's been for sale for a while. And then I count. And I don't say anything because I want to see if they're going to talk or they're just going to say, or they ask me a question. But I'll literally go before I say anything more. And then they'll say, yeah, what can I tell you about it? And I'll just say, well, is there anything wrong with it? I mean, if it's it seems like it's been there a long time. Is, it's a pretty hot market. Is there anything that needs to be updated, or is there any issues with it? And they might start talking, yes, there is, or whatever. And then I'll say, this is the key question. Well, is there any chance the owner might consider something creative on this home? And then again, I do I'm not telling them what yet. Usually the agent will say, like what? Usually that's their response. Like what? Or they'll say, why? You can't get a mortgage? If they say why you can't get a mortgage, then I say, well, actually, I'm looking to build some additional properties in my portfolio. I didn't say I'm a real estate investor because that's kind of a negative word with agents. So I said, well, I'm looking to actually buy some additional properties for my portfolio. And I thought this one looked like a really great one. And so I was just wondering if the seller might consider that because, yeah, I can get a mortgage. However, with the way that lending is right now with our mortgage companies, after you have a certain number of properties in your portfolio, they don't really like to do too many more mortgages. So I'm looking to help a lot of owners who might want to consider something more creative. So that's why I asked if they would consider something more creative. Is that a possibility? And so I kind of like just put it right back on them, something like that. And they'll say something like, well, what are you thinking? Now, here's the key. I'll say I'm going to throw every term I know out there. So I'll say, well, something like a lease with an option to buy, a lease to own, a lease purchase, a rent with option to buy, in Michigan, we call them a land contract, or seller financing, something like that. And then I just stop. So I say them kind of slow where they can hear each one, because notice I said several of those things are identical, but they're just different words. Rent to own, lease with an option to buy, same thing really. Some people think they're different, but they're really not different. They're the same thing. It's just, but some agents might have heard of rent to own, but they've never heard of a lease with an option to buy. I've had agents say to me before, well, they would consider a rent with option to buy, but not a lease to own, or none of the other. I'm, okay, okay, well, we could do a rent with an option to buy then, and so it's just, I'm looking for that term that they might go, oh, I know what that is, or let me ask about that, because they may not, our real estate agents in general, we're not educated to know about creative financing. So they're not going to necessarily know all of those things or any of those things. So I'm going to throw them all out somewhat slow where they might be able to catch one or two of them. Okay. So that's what I'm looking for, is those kind of agents that are going to, and if they say, no, they absolutely wouldn't do anything like that. Okay. Well, they can't, or they don't want to. And I try to say it nice, not condescending, because again, I need that real estate agent to kind of be on my side if this thing were to go down. I can't be rude to them or disrespectful or treat them like they're not the expert. I need to be their buddy, their friend, because they're gonna be the one that's gonna help me get this deal done if in fact it's a possibility for that seller. So I'm always very careful and polite. If they say absolutely not, I just say, okay, thank you. Or I might ask, hey, can you think of any other sellers or any other listings you might have where your seller might have said to you, hey, Sally, if I don't sell my home soon, I might consider renting it. Sally, can you think of any of your other listings where your sellers might have said something or be thinking something like that right now? And then again, I pause and let them answer. So I hope that helps you. Yeah, real estate agents are like, by the way, I found my best two. I happen to own a large Keller Williams office in Metro Detroit. So I have about 300 agents in my office, and my two best deals ever that I put in my Roth IRA have come from agents in my office. They weren't even option deals. I just bought them, but they were both from letting people know what you do, right? And real estate agents of deals that never hit the market.
Definitely. Real estate agents are a tricky one. I'm not personally licensed. Plus, me being 20 years old, real estate agents and realtors do not respect me at all. They treat me like trash, and I'm okay with it. So, for example, like a wholesale deal, because I'm there just going through the walkthrough, they treat me terribly. They don't understand it. To play devil's advocate with you here, when I talk to most realtors on a short sale, they literally don't give me time of day. You're not licensed. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm the expert. Stop. At least they're in for their own best interest, and they always want what's in it for me. This is just Florida, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's a shame.
I mean, it is a shame, but I mean, is there any way you think you can build credibility with these realtors, especially when you're a younger guy with less experience talking to realtors?
Yeah, I would say, well, first, we can't please every agent. So I'm going to say there's some agents that are jerks. We don't want to do deals with them because they just don't get it. They don't really actually care about your client, and that's ridiculous. For the other ones, it's interesting that they wouldn't. I'm thinking through this, Zach. I think it's maybe they would be intimidated by you too, because you probably know a lot for a young guy, too much almost, right?
Well, we have realtors. Oh, sorry.
Go ahead.
No, we have realtors that they bring me all my cash buyers, and they're very knowledgeable about investing. And we do some short sales with them, but the average one that has a listing on the market for 150 days for a crazy stupid price, that's the one I'm talking about.
And they won't consider, what are you trying to look to do? A short sale with them, or you're trying to look to do a lease option?
I've called trying to do lease options subject twos, and because there's so little equity in there, they put a crazy high price on it, and they literally I'm not even going to present this, and they're in for their own best interest. But that's the issue I have with them, and that's why I'm exclusively doing all of our creative deals with sellers, so we can control it.
Yeah,
so,
I think for the real estate agents, one of the key things is like when you're, and I didn't mention this on my little script that I just kind of went through when I was talking with agents, but there's a way to kind of draw a line, especially with the lease option about commission. And you can say, would they consider something creative? And when I say all of those, and then I say, oh, by the way, if we do something like this, I would pay your commission up front. I would pay the listing agent portion of the commission up front, which is like 3%.
Yeah.
Because I'm going to get 3 to 5% from my tenant buyer. So I can give the agent 3% and be in the deal for 0. So I don't know have you done that ever where you mentioned the commission in a drop, like a little,
I've considered on some short sales having them being the buyer and the selling, and they go crazy for it. But sometimes they don't like it. It's all about the money with them.
Yeah.
But we're really big on controlling the seller.
Yeah, I'm an agent and I take my commission on the other half. But if I wasn't an agent, then yes, that's a great thing you could say is, hey, I'm not being represented by an agent, and you could double dip this, and I will give you part of the commission out of my pocket up front if we do something like this, which would mean, because normally the seller pays commission. Now I'm going to get that money back as a credit later. If I do a lease option, let's say I give them a couple percent or 3%, strong seller market, I'll give up to 3% down. Yeah. But in a buyer's market, I would probably only give like 1%, right? When things get slower and there's more inventory and there's more choices out there for me, I'm going to give less out of pocket. And that percentage or 2 or 3% gets applied toward the purchase price when I close on that deal. If I close on the deal, if I don't close on that deal, I'm getting the money from the tenant buyer anyways, and they're not going to get. I'm just going to get that deal for nothing. Same thing with a short sale. And by the way, the deals that I told you about that I bought from my agents, I didn't take commission because they brought me the deal off market. If you bring me the deal off market and I buy it, especially before it hits the market, if I'm the buyer and we can work out a deal, absolutely, I let them double it.
Definitely. So a huge, this is the most crazy part about the creative finance space is there's a billion people giving you a billion, rules and ideas. I talk to people who've been doing lease options subject twos for like two years, 1 year, and they gave me this rule, like it's got to be 300s to cash flow. I mean, what are Wendy Patton's cash flow rules?
Well, it's funny. Okay, when you say people have done lease options for a couple of years, they know nothing yet. And I'll tell you why they know nothing yet. I mean, they know some of it, right? But the problem is they haven't gone through a cycle yet. They barely even let those tenant buyers exercise and go through these turnovers, right? Because the
Mhm.
typical tenant buyer is going to need 18 to 24 months. So they've barely been through a cycle, if at all. And they don't know what they don't know yet because they haven't had so many tenant buyers either back out or need extensions, or the market tanks in the middle of it, or they need to extend with the seller or whatever. With the cash flow deals, for me personally, okay, when I first started out, I would have needed hundreds of dollars, $200 to $300 a month cash flow.
Yes.
Okay, because I couldn't back it up. And part of that whole thing is, let me kind of explain why. When you're looking at a lease option deal, there's a whole bunch of aspects to it, right? There's the purchase price, there's how much I'm paying a month, and there's how much a month is going toward credit. So there's kind of like this package deal, like really, and
Mhm.
it's, what am I really going to net on this deal? What am I going to be able to sell it for? What can I buy it for with all this package stuff? What that net is going to be important to me. So I'm willing to make zero cash flow. I'm willing to pay, and this is just, there's not any that I would do that are $1,000 a month, but let me just give you the examples. One, I say it's $1,000 a month that I'm getting from the owner, and it only would rent for 1,000. I might do that if, let's say, the $1,000 a month is being applied, or half of it is, or I got the price of the property for way under value, but I didn't have to pay market value for it or even close to market value, and I could sell it for even more than market value on a lease option, sandwich lease option. So there's huge spread in there. So I'm willing to go for zero cash flow if the back end is stronger or the equity buildup is stronger at this point in my career. But when I first started out, I kind of needed that little cash flow, and you can't exist on zero if you don't have other income coming in, right? If I'm only paying 1,200, I'm getting 1,200. There's nothing there to live on for a while, and it could be a year or two. Lease options are not a short-term big profit game. They're more of a longer-term profit game, right? Whereas wholesaling is quick cash, right? And wholesaling lease options is quick cash. Sandwich lease options is typically bigger cash, longer term.
Yeah. Okay. And what would your rules be for, I know, I understand the lease option side, but for like a subject to, because you got insurance,
Right.
repairs. What are the rules for that, cash
So
flow wise?
so subject twos, I'm assuming your audience pretty much knows this part, but sub
Mhm.
twos are when you take over the deed, the seller gives you the deed, you actually are the owner, subject to the underlying mortgage, so you're making those mortgage payments. For me, what I look for is I only look for a mortgage I'd want to take over, which means that it's got a great interest rate, which is, we're an all-time great time for that. It's got a great interest rate, and I really prefer, for me, I prefer that, well, there's going to be some cash flow there. Obviously, from what their PITI is, principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, to what I can rent it for. And then what I really prefer, I like it that they've paid on it for a while. In other words, there's a lot of equity going toward principal. The one I just bought recently was the owner had been paying on it for 12 years, and I get about $500 a month principal just on equity because the mortgage has been in existence for a bit of time, and $500 a month cash flow. So
Mhm.
together, the net I make really is $1,000 a month. 500 I get later, 500 I get now. And
And
that's my kind of ideal type of sub two.
okay. And on something like that where it's high equity, I mean, how much would you be putting down to the seller?
On that particular one, I put 35 grand, and that's unusual for me. That would be a lot, but
Yeah.
he had some equity, and I still
Mhm.
picked up 50 grand of equity. So I'm not. So when you're looking at, like, I get $1,000 a month plus 50 grand. If I go sell it right now, I will sell it for 50,000 more than I paid.
Mhm. Okay.
So yeah, I'll give him 35 grand.
Okay.
And you know what's funny, Zach? It's kind of interesting. People are so interesting. This particular owner, his name is John, literally John. um, I went to his house. It came from a wholesaler who basically was like, hey, I want to flip this. And I ended up converting it to sub two instead of paying cash for the deal and keeping it as a rental property in my portfolio. But when I went to meet with John, I said, I asked the wholesaler, I said, can I go meet with your seller? If you trust me, I want to go meet with the seller and see if I can make something out of this. And if I do, I'll pay you. If I don't, no big deal. Because the wholesaler was going to walk away. It just wasn't going to make a lot of money because of the margins and stuff. But anyways, so I met with John, and I basically when I was meeting with John, I said, John, why don't you let me list this for you? I can, basically I bought it for $150. It's worth $200. Okay. I said, John, let me list it for you. I'll list it for $199.9 with 6% commission and everything. You're going to net more than if I buy it from you. And he literally said, no, I don't want to do that. I want to close it in like 4 days. And I go, 4 days. I go, then you're going to have to leave the mortgage in your name. Well, I don't really want to leave the mortgage in my name. I said, okay, then let me list it for you. I mean, it's up to you, John, but you only have one or two choices. You can't do both. You've got to make a choice. And that's the only choice I'm giving you from me. You can sell to somebody else. Maybe somebody else will give you cash for all of it, but I'll give you $35,000 and take over your mortgage, or I'll list it for you. And he chose the I'll take the $35,000, Wendy. So there you go. And we did the sub two and did all the bank stuff and got the payoffs and got me the mortgage authorization and all the contracts and things that you need to do to make sure that it's as legit as possible. But yeah, is there potential for doing sell costs? Yes, Zach, there is a potential. There is a potential that would happen. Now, if it does, I'll just refi it, because guess what? Now, if the longer you go, it happens to be a bank I bank at too, which will be interesting if it ever gets called. If it gets called, I may be able to pull in some strings at my bank. But I didn't tell them I'm doing a sub two on that because they probably wouldn't allow it. I mean, they're not going to give permission per se.
So in your experience, you've been doing, how long have you been doing subject to deals then for?
Since the early 90s. Yeah, I've been doing sub twos. I mostly did options prior to subject twos. And it was a very, very good friend of mine who he always did sub twos and I always did options. And I said, I don't know why you're not doing options. I mean, why are you taking over the deed? Sometimes you shouldn't. And he's like, well, I always want to get the deed. I go, no, you really shouldn't always want the deed. What if the market goes down? What if you don't have enough equity in there? You shouldn't take the deed. You want to take the deed on certain deals, in my opinion. And then he said, well, why aren't you getting the deed? Why are you only doing options? So sometimes you should own it instead of optioning. So anyways, the bottom line is we kind of switched with each other and helped each other learn the other's kind of strategy so that you could have a two-pronged approach, right? Then you could do either one of those depending on which one is better for the seller's situation. Like for me, I will not do a lease option with an owner who is financially in trouble, who has lots of liens and property, because unless they're willing to put it into a land that's going to protect it or whatever from judgments and liens. But otherwise, I'm not going to do that with them. Did you just lose me? I got a little thing that said your internet connection is unstable.
Oh, it's fine. It's great. What I really wanted to get at here, so you've been doing this for about 20 to 30 years, subject to deals here. How many times have you personally had a due on sale clause on your property? Zero. That's exactly what I was.
There's sometimes like they'll call, and in Michigan we have a weird thing where we have homestead, non-homestead. So obviously it's converting from a non-homestead to a homestead. I mean, homestead to a non-homestead.
That's Florida.
Typically the homeowner lives there. Same thing, right? And so we have to file a form, which happens because I do a true closing. I do it through a title company and title insurance on everything except the underlying mortgage. That way, if there's any other liens, judgments, or whatever, they get paid off or taken care of. And then that mortgage is still in place. But then what happens is in Michigan, our property tax is almost pretty much double if they're non-homestead. Okay. So when that happens, and if there's an escrow in place, that mortgage payment's going to go up. So sometimes I've even called and said, hey, the taxes are going to go up significantly. I just I just bought the property. And if you need me to pay more on escrow, I will adjust that now, or instead of waiting, because they only adjust it once a year otherwise. And they'll say, what do you mean? And I go, well, I just bought it. And they go, oh, okay. And then I document, I talked to so-and-so on this day about the payment and told them I owned it and then I purchased it. And that way, it's been disclosed, and you can record it or whatever you want to do, kind of to, later use that if that ever did get called due, that, hey, they knew about it a year ago and they never did a thing on it.
That's really important. When I get PITI from people and they have a homesteaded house, this might be confusing to some of you guys, but if you're in a homestead state, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah. I get their PITI, I'm like, oh, taxes are fine. This is going to be a rock star cash flow deal. And then you calculate what's going to be when the homestead's out, and you're like, this ain't a deal. So would you do the same exact thing, PITI, then you'll add in what the actual tax would be on homestead?
For me to be able to figure it out, because I know it's going to go up on the sub too. And I'm taking it over, right? So I know what it's going to be pretty much when it doubles. So and in Michigan, it's really a big deal. Michigan and Texas, I think in Texas, a little bit of a homestead as well, I believe. And then Florida. Those are the big three that I know of. There might be some other ones too, but those three are for sure affected.
Mm-hmm. So you might these listeners are going to get really excited hearing lease options, subject twos. They're going to start running out there and going on appointments post COVID-19. And they're going to run into two huge hurdles here that I see. First of all, they're going to get, as Mike Tyson says, punched in the mouth figuratively when they say lease options terms. And you're going to get so many objections and you're not going to know what to do. So what are the top objections you get on your appointments for lease options, and how do you overcome them?
Okay. So probably, and you really pretty much you could throw any objection at me, right? I've heard them all, and they come off, they do come. One of the first ones, it depends on if it's through a real estate agent or through a seller, homeowner. One of the big things is, I always want a home. Here's the thing. I always want the homeowner, if I'm going to do a sandwich lease option or I'm going to rent it out, I want the homeowner to realize, like, the buck stops with me, right? I'm irresponsible. So a lot of the objections can be handled with that response. So let's say they know I'm not going to live there. They know I'm an investor when I do it. Okay. It's not only verbally discussed. They know I'm not moving in, but they also know it because I put it in writing in the contract. So they know that I'm going to sublet it, but I don't talk about the subletting. I talk about what I'm doing for the seller. Always. I always try to keep it on the seller. What's their pain point? How am I solving that for them by taking over payments or making payments to them, getting them out from underneath whatever the headache is about this particular property for them. So I'm always going to kind of keep it on that. But they might say, well, Wendy, so you're not actually going to live here. I said, no, I'm not going to live here. And they say, well, what if the tenant does a lot of damage? And so then I'll say to them, or what if the tenant trashes the house? So then there's a couple of ways I could approach that. One is I could say, I'm responsible. You're not going to have to worry about that because I'm paying you and I'm signing the lease with you. They're not signing the lease with you. I'm responsible to you. And having me as your tenant, not the resident, but the tenant, is a really great benefit. Or I might ask them, tell me when you think of trashed your home and you say those words to me, tell me, Mr. or Mrs. Seller, what that means to you when a home is trashed. That's one thing. Sometimes they might say, like, well, what if they throw red Kool-Aid on the carpet? Okay, that to some owners is trashed. Well, then I'm going to go back to that whole answer before. I'm responsible. I'm your tenant. You don't have to worry about anybody else but me. But they might, what if they take a sledgehammer to the walls and, pound them in? And this has happened to me. Okay. Not often, maybe once ever, but it did happen on a lease option. and and so then I say to them, "Oh gosh, well that's actually vandalism. If you're talking that extreme, that when the tenant does physical damage to your home with the intent to harm your home or to hurt it physically, that's an insurance claim. And so I'll work with you on your insurance. I'll pay the deductible. I'll work with you on that. If there's a deductible or whatever, I'll be responsible. But and then I'll go after the person who did the damage for that, and maybe criminally as well if we can get them. But it's not going to cost you a dime. Okay, so you're really always trying to make sure that you're hearing what the actual objection is, and then answering it from there. And if you're not, like, maybe the other reason to kind of question them back about what does that mean to you when you say damage is it kind of gives you a chance to not only let them say what they're going to say, but for you to think, okay, crap, what am I going to say now? What am I going to say? Kind of gives you a chance to formulate your thoughts on that. So, and in the beginning, of course, I didn't even know what all the objections were when I started doing options. And then over the years, I've heard every single objection you could possibly imagine, because I've done so many of them, that they're all the same. They're all the same. That's one of the biggest objections. Or one of the other ones that I would tell you is this is a key point. And by the way, I teach all of this in my courses that your dad, listened to years ago as well. And I also have those courses today that are updated, by the way, for 2020. But anyways, you go. When you're looking at that, when you're putting together your deal with the seller, you're going to have a couple of different things you're going to put in there. One of the things I put is I don't start my option or my rental agreement with the owner until I find someone to lease from me. Okay, if I'm going to do a sandwich lease option, or even if I'm going to do just a lease, and I want to hold that property for a while and build a equity or whatever it is that I want to do with that property, I'm not going to start making payments to them till then. The other thing I also have in my contracts is that I do have the right to get out of that option with a 60-day notice. And that way, if the market tanks, or I just can't rent that darn thing, or nobody wants to buy it, or I can't buy it, whatever, it gives me that safety net of kind of getting out of that deal if I want to get out of that deal. So those are some of the kind of things. But one of the things, here's one of the other things. I always make sure that most of the time a seller has a mortgage on the property. Most of the time. Not always, but most of the time. And when they have a mortgage on the property, I want to make sure that mortgage gets paid. Mm-hmm. Because if they don't pay it and I pay them, guess what? It goes in foreclosure and I lose all my equity. And how do you think I learned that one? Everything that could happen has happened to me. So that happened to me one time, and only one time, because then you fix it, right, for the future. Well, now what I do is I make sure that my rental payment goes to the mortgage company instead of the owner. I pay the mortgage directly. If whatever my payment is, I pay toward the mortgage, I should say. If I'm paying $1,000 a month and the mortgage payment is $1,100, the owner needs to come up with the other $100, which many times they do. They will pay the difference. If that's what I'm willing to offer and they're willing to accept, they pay the difference. A lot of times though, let's say I'm paying $1,500, the mortgage payment is $1,000. Then I pay $1,000 toward the mortgage company and $500 to the seller. I do not send $1,500 to the seller. I make sure that mortgage payment is paid. That's really, really crucial to protect yourself. So that could be an objection that comes up, where they might say, well, wait a minute, how do I know you're going to make my mortgage payment? And then I have several different things, that I can say. I could say, well, what concerns you? I mean, obviously, I know you're concerned that if I don't pay your mortgage payment, it's going to affect your credit. Is that the main issue that concerns you? Or what really concerns you about me making your mortgage payment? Well, I don't know if you're going to pay it. Well, I could, what would make you feel comfortable with that? So I'm just going to kind of throw back in their court to see what is their concern and how can I solve their concern. So sometimes it's like, well, I just want to make sure it's paid. I said, well, would it make you feel better if I wrote the check to your mortgage company? And by the way, a little tip, in the lower corner of your check, or if it's an ACH or however you're paying it, make sure you put the loan number on there so it gets applied to the right mortgage. And then, let's say they say, well, I want to make the payment myself. Great. Okay. I'll send you 2 checks a month. One's going to be written to your mortgage company with a loan number on there, and one to you. You can pay the check directly if you'd like, or if you'd like, I can ACH it every month and send you a receipt. Or I'll set up what I do typically, and my sub-twos also, is I'll set up ACH and automatic payments right through my bank account. And I'll say, well, how about if I just do an automatic payment out of my bank account? And every month I'll send you proof. If I don't send you proof by the, third of the month, then, you can give me a call. Or obviously it'd be just like any tenant. You could always evict me, which, happen. Don't worry about that, because I'm going to make sure I pay your mortgage payment, because this is an investment for me also. So does that help? I'll give you a couple of the top ones.
Oh yeah.
With a couple in there that are really key to put in your contracts, and that I use in my contracts for sure.
Definitely. So one of the hottest things I can find with lease options and subject twos in 2020, I don't know if this has happened decades past, is a lot of guys and gals are finding rent-to-own people, and they're putting in high more profit deals. So they're using like sober homes, converting into that, maybe like a domestic violence women's shelter. Do you have any experience doing that?
Yeah, I've done quite a few like group homes, we call them, right? And they become, they're either mentally challenged, or like you said, they're halfway houses or that type of thing. You can option from owners and then really get high rent. So that's a great way to do that. You can also option from the owner and Airbnb if it's in those certain areas. That's a big hot area, right? So you have once you're controlling the property, which is through an option, you and you don't even have to have the option, by the way, with the owner. But why not have the option? Typically, I'm never putting any option fee down with a direct owner, or nothing. I mean, I'm just signing the rental agreement, which is the promise to pay, which is equitable, gives me something valuable consideration or whatever. So I don't actually have to put money down. But why not option it if I'm going to control it? Otherwise, you could just lease it and then sublease it, right? But I like to get that option if I can. If not, you can always lease and sublease for any of those other items like we talked about. That's big. Any of those, think about anything that can produce extra rental income, that can always be like kind of the exit strategy or the solution for what you're going to do with that property. For me, my typical is just converting it to a tenant buyer sandwich lease option, or a straight out rental. Like my sub 2 that I was just talking about, that one I did for $1,000 a month. I don't want to lease option it. I wanted to sub 2 it. I mean, I wanted to only rent it because I'm getting $1,000 a month for it, which is more than I make on most of the ones I own free and clear in my own portfolio.
Yeah. Okay. So with your decades of experience, we're doing the last couple of questions here. So with your decades of experience, you have definitely had your fair share of crazy real estate stories. What would you say is your craziest real estate story?
Oh my gosh, I have a lot of crazy ones. Craziest. Crazy. I don't know if it's really that crazy, but I have a lot of jewelry from my tenants. I've been like a pawn shop to a couple of my tenants where they've given me their wedding rings and emerald rings, multiple over the years, where they chose to do this. Or I might suggest, if they owe me rent and they can't pay it, hey, do you have anything you want me just to hold? And, if you don't pay, I keep it. And if you do, I'll give it back to you. And no one's ever paid. So I literally, as you know, I'm out here visiting my daughter. I brought her one of the emerald rings and said, this is from one of my tenants like 15 years ago. I kept holding it, hoping one day they would pay and get it back, and they never did. So I think that's kind of a crazy thing. The jewelry thing, I've got diamonds over there. I've taken a lot of mobile homes and trade for option fees. So they'd say, hey, like I want to get on my mobile home, I want to own a property. I would say, why don't you just give me the title to your mobile home, because they want it free and clear. And then I sell the mobile home on financing because they won't let you sublet them here. They won't let you rent them here, Michigan, mostly they won't. But I'll just keep the paper, kind of like use a mortgage and do that. I mean, that's kind of crazy. I've just got some really you want to know about my best deal I just got from one of my agents?
Yes, of
Okay.
course.
Okay, so this is my best deal. So there's this, and it's not a lease option. Okay, it's just a great deal. So this literally, I just bought it less than 2 months ago. So the one of my agents came to me and said, "Hey, I know you do investing, Wendy," and I actually called her an investment deal and something else. And she said, "Well, I got an investment opportunity for you. I deal in probate, and I have this client who just died, and the estate has hired me to sell the real estate. And well, they've got this 8-unit apartment building in Detroit." And I said, "Oh, okay." And she goes, "Well, are you interested?" And I said, "I really don't do Detroit. I mean, it's just not." And she goes, "Well, why don't you just look it up? I mean, it's close to Wayne State University, and I don't know, maybe you'd be interested." And I think they would take like 150 or 200 grand for it. And I go, "Well, okay, let me check it out." And she goes, "And the rents are like $4,000 or $5,000 a month." And I go, "Well, I'll look it up." Well, I didn't know, because I don't do Detroit, that that this little pocket's called Midtown, and it's in the heart of the revitalized area of Detroit, like the area. Okay. Well, I didn't know that when I first bought it. And I ended up buying it for 200 grand. And 3 days before closing, I was going to close on my LLC. And all of a sudden I thought, oh my gosh, this thing is worth $500,000 right now, the way it is.
Wow.
I don't have to do a thing to it. Like, I think if I fix it up, it's worth 900 to $1 million. And the rental rates would be over 10,000. So, because they're really low, and it was just sitting there doing nothing. Anyways, and it's not being used as student housing or anything it's close to the law school, it's close to the medical school for, like, high end, is close to the hospital for doctors. Anyways, and 3 days before closing, all of a sudden I go, oh my gosh, I made a mistake. I do not want to buy this. I don't want to keep it forever because it's not my area. I'm not an apartment kind of person anyways, and I don't want to manage 8 units in Detroit. And I don't want to manage a lot of turnover with students, and it's just not my thing. But I mean, it's a deal. So I decided to throw it into my Roth. The problem was I didn't have 200 grand in my Roth. I'm like, shoot, I don't have $200,000 sitting in my Roth right now. I buy all real estate in there. I don't have the money sitting in there. So I started calling my friends. Hey, you got 200 grand? Got 200 grand? Who's got 200? Anyways, one of my friends said, I got 200 grand. I'll give it to you. So we flipped it and moved it into my Roth, and they lent me the 200 grand. I financed 100% of it. But the thing is, if you do it in your Roth and you finance it 100%, when you go to sell it, you have to have paid off that mortgage in order for you not to have UBIT taxes. And we can't get into this because we don't have time. But anyways, I have 2 other properties in my IRA that I've got to sell right now that will pay the 200 grand off, so that when I sell this thing for 700 to $1 million, somewhere in that range, depending on how much work I do, I might, kind of do some of the rehab and not all of it. It will go back into my Roth tax free.
Yeah.
I love that one.
That's great. So I really wanted to talk about here this post-COVID-19 opportunities in real estate. A reason why I wanted to put you on here is a lot of people have been doing this real estate investing for 30 plus years. All they do is coaching, and they don't do any deals. What I love about you is you're still doing deals, and you're still coaching, helping people out here. So you know what's going on in the market. You have a very good heartbeat going on. You're still doing great deals. So what's a great opportunity happening right now with post-COVID-19 to get lease options? So what's your opinion on what we should be doing?
Well, I think anytime there's fear and there's uncertainty, which there is right now, people are more motivated, and they will make deals that they may not make in 2 months from now or 3 months from now. So I'm hearing a lot of wholesalers are beefing up their marketing right now. You guys might be as well, beefing it up right now, because there are a lot higher response rates, or they're going back to people that said no before, and the people are saying yes now during this time. So in COVID time, there's opportunity, but post-COVID time, I think there's going to be opportunity for lease options, subject tos, a lot of things. You name it. Literally, my husband and I are selling. I think right after post-COVID, there's going to be a great opportunity. I think there's going to be a spike in pricing, and I think I can exit out of a couple of my properties at top dollar, and then I will be using and waiting for the property values to go down. I think they're going to go down. I don't know if that's true or not. I just think it can't help but to go down at some point in the next year, and I'll be ready to scoop up some of those deals again, hoping that those prices fall. As far as options go, hey, if it doesn't go down and you option, great. If it does go down and you option, great. The beauty about options is it doesn't really matter what happens in the market, because you optioned it and you don't have an obligation. So it gives you that freedom to choose what you want to do with it. Maybe you extend it, maybe you renegotiate, or you get out of it. Whereas everything else, you own it pretty much and you're stuck in it. So I'd say there's a huge opportunity right now for lease options, and just controlling property while people are uncertain, and then figuring out what you're going to do with it after that.
Mm-hmm. So last two questions here. So Rick he wanted me to bring this up because I didn't bring it up last time I talked to someone when it came to lease options. So what is your top ways to find a lease option and subject to deals marketing wise?
For me, one of them, of course, is real estate agents.
Mm-hmm.
The other one is through the for rent ads. It's the biggest one for me. Craigslist, Facebook marketing, or marketplace. I mean, wherever your local area has the most rentals listed, I go right after those landlords directly. I'm looking for someone who maybe couldn't sell their home fast enough, so they decided to rent it, or they're a burned out landlord and they are tired of renting, but they just keep putting it back on for rent. But really, they truly would rather just sell it if they had the right person. And yet they like that monthly income, so maybe they would do a lease option. They're already willing to rent. That's a key thing. They've got to be willing to rent and not need their cash out. Anyone who's already marketing for rent is willing to rent. Now just finding out if they're willing to sell. And I find about 30 to 50% will sell. Doesn't mean it's a good deal, but they would consider selling on a lease option when asked and using the script. I have a great script on my website. If anyone wants it, they can get it for free on my wendypatton.com website. And they can get that script for free of what I use to call for rent ads.
Mm-hmm. Actually, on your YouTube, I think it's Wendy Patton on YouTube. You had some great conversations. Some of them are 10 years old, but they are
They're
golden.
still relevant.
You talking to realtors, and it's amazing. That's why I asked you that question.
It's exactly the same stuff. It's so funny. People go, well, and I really should record some new ones, but they're going to be the exact same. They're exactly
amazing.
the same conversations.
I wanted to ask you that because you talked to a realtor once on the YouTube. It's got like 50,000 views, and like, hi, my name's Wendy Patton. I went up, blah, blah, blah. And they're like, oh, hi. The reason why I do the same thing, and they're like, who are you? Are you licensed? Like, it's interrogation for me when I call, but it's funny. So if someone want to get a hold of you, learn your scripts, learn your teachings, that's helped Rick out a lot. I mean, how would they get in contact with you?
They could go to wendypatton.com. That's the best way. It's got my office phone number, email in there. There's some free, I've got a lot of blogs and stuff, links to my YouTube videos if you want to see those. A lot of blogs that are written about lease option stuff. There's some free stuff that you can get. Also, my courses on there. If you want to take this to the next level, like Rick did years ago, and really studied the lease options and make it part of your investing strategies, buy the courses, If you want a little special deal because you guys saw it here, call my number there and tell us, and we'll work you out a deal versus buying it directly right on the site.
Yeah, I mean, here's something old we got from 2005 with Wendy Patton. She looks the exact same.
That's funny. Yeah.
It's beautiful. So just to end this, I asked the same question to every single person. I started out real estate investing with $300 in my bank account, turned that into six figures in high school. So, I mean, if you were 17 years old again in Detroit, Michigan, you had $300 in your bank account, what would you do to become the next Wendy Patton?
I wouldn't have gone to college. same money. And I think I would have, I would have done more options early on. I didn't do options till later. I used my credit cards. That's how I got started in investing. And I would have done options earlier and subject twos. I would have, and wholesale. I would have done those three strategies because I think they're great, or one of them or all three of them. Okay. Because those are three strategies that don't typically require money or credit or anything. And so that's what I would do to start with. And I would have started a Roth IRA sooner while you qualify, because once you become really good at this stuff, you don't typically qualify to contribute. There's always backdooring, which is what I use to get money in my IRA, but it just makes it a little bit more of a pain to do that. But I would definitely get a lot of cash flow going too, so you can passively live. You're not just the money in your bank account, but it's setting up passive income where you're getting rent and cash flow from some of these lease options where there's a spread on each of them. And that becomes what you can start living on month to month, start building it up to enough where you've got enough to live on every month without dipping into your savings. That's what I would start to build toward.
So to piggyback on that, so what would your plan be?
What was that?
What would your plan be then at 17 in Michigan?
Plan B?
What would your plan be to get the deals? Your plan to get your deals at 17?
Well, I think if I was 17 starting over, I wasn't as smart as you were at 17. I don't know. I mean, I think I was still kind of crazy and wild then. I don't know. Maybe I did need to go to school to settle down. But if I was 17 and very focused and wanting to get into the business, I would start learning everything you could about those strategies. And, I really do have the best book on lease options and subject twos. I'm not going to get a dime for telling you this because I don't even have the book myself. You have to go to Amazon and buy it used. Okay. It's called Investing in Real Estate with Lease Options and Subject Twos. It is so relevant still. It is an amazing book. It is the best one written about lease options and subject twos. And then you can see which one or both if you want to go into that. So start out cheap because you don't have a lot of money to invest, and see what you can learn from that, and then learn as much as you can, and start putting into action what you learn. I think the biggest thing is one of the reason people fail, besides failure, is people they don't take action. So you've got to take action. So not just learning that stuff, but doing something with it. I remember the first couple of deals I did, Zach. I was young. I was only 21 when I did my first couple of deals, but still I was very young. And I remember shaking in my boots going to make offers on my first few deals. I was like, blah, 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 blah. And then I thought I had to really at least I took action, right? But I had to Wendy, what's the worst thing? They say no. You're broke now anyways. You don't have it now. You have nothing right now. So what's the worst thing that's going to happen? They're going to say no. So I always say, suck it up, buttercup. And I would go in there and just give myself that pep talk before I went in the door and take action. You've got to take action. Get out there and start looking at properties, making offers. You're going to fumble. You're going to make some mistakes. But then when you do have the money, if you only have 300, maybe you find a course you can make payments on or something. But you do have to, you do want to learn from other people that have been before you, because that's the best thing you can get. I don't care if it's lease options and subject twos. You don't have to go through me. But if you're going to do wholesaling, find a great wholesaling course. Spend the money on that, because that will take you to a whole nother level that you don't have the time or money to lose by not having that. That's a huge mistake I think a lot of investors make, is they don't actually buy someone's stuff, or someone who's really got a legit great course, and they try to figure it out all themselves, and they make a lot of mistakes along the way, and it costs them way more than the course would cost them.
Wow. That's amazing. I really appreciate you coming on today, Wendy. This has really opened my eyes. This is one of the best podcasts on creative I think I've done. And it's amazing. So before we sign off today, do you have any parting thoughts to the audience?
First of all, I want to say thank you for having me on the call, Zach. It's always a just by you personally, how young you are, and that's amazing. I think that, you know, it doesn't matter how old you are or how young you are. So you're young, you've got a lot of life ahead of you to make all the mistakes or to really hone your business. That's great. If you're older and you might be 70 years old and you just don't have enough for retirement, it's not too late for you either, right? You got to still do the same thing, which is taking action. Just do it. You know, you've got to get in it and take action. If you don't have much to retire on, you don't have much to lose either. So you have to take chances. I think that's the big thing, is taking some risk, not crazy risk, not being desperate risk, but, you know, taking some risk. It is, it can be a little bit scary to get started, but you have to do it to make the money. I mean, you just have to take action. And I think that's one of my biggest things for people, is taking action. So what I always tell my kids, take action, guys. Doesn't matter if it's perfect, just do it. Just try it. That's how we get good at it, by practicing and doing it.
Boom. I really appreciate you coming on. I hope to have you on soon, and we can talk about how great this conversation has been, how many people you've helped. I wish you and your family safety during this coronavirus and a healthy delivery of your grandkid. And I really appreciate you coming on. And check her out, guys, Wendy Patton, wendypatton.com.